Hi folks, well as you know the tourism industry has taken a massive hit as a result of COVID-19, and very soon we're going to have a chat to the Executive Director of Marketing for the South Australian Tourism Commission. His name is Brent Hill, so looking forward to that chat. But before we do that, just want to give a shout out to a great local business, Sublime here on Bray Street. These guys are a great bunch of people. Dan, Jay, Sheldon and the crew, get on down and say hi, get yourself some great coffee and the best service going around as well, and you won't be disappointed. I'll just have a sip of this great coffee now. Absolutely awesome. Anyway, let's go and chat to Brent Hill, guys.
Welcome to Legends with Bevo. Thanks to the Holdy Hotel, Coopers and Anytime Fitness Glenelg.
Brent Hill, the Executive Director of Marketing for the South Australian Tourism Commission. Great to have you on Legends with Bevo. How are you going at the moment with COVID-19 and how's it affected your role, mate?
I'm good, thanks, Bevo. Thanks for having me, mate. And look, it's been interesting. It's definitely not a quiet moment at the moment, just in terms of trying to, work through with our industry and help everybody, try and, pivot their businesses and get through to come out the other side. But, I got to say, the initial signs now are starting to look like we've made a lot of the right calls and a lot of the right moves, and maybe we can start to see a bit of a light at the end of the tunnel, which is exciting.
And in terms of your role, obviously, you've been with the Tourism Commission for a while now. But how did you end up in the current role that you're in?
Yeah, so I've always been a marketer, and ever since uni, I sort of discovered marketing second year uni, and just really loved that. And I always had a bit of a passion for travel. It's such a great thing to do, and grew up in South Australia. So when I saw the role come up, about 4.5 years ago or so, it was such a great opportunity to sort of jump into something that matched two of my passions. I'm a passionate marketer, and as a marketer, you always want to be pushing something that you really love. And I always felt like South Australia was a little underappreciated. I'd lived interstate for a while and travelled the world a lot, and I thought we had a lot to offer in South Australia. So, it's been a great ride. The last 4 years particularly were exceptional, and we've had a really challenging time now, but I think we're well positioned to come out of it.
And obviously, Kangaroo and Adelaide Hills have had the double whammy because they had the bushfires and now the COVID-19 situation. Where to from here for them, and what can we do, I guess, to support them and help them out?
Yeah, look, mate, I've got to say, the Book Them Out campaign, was incredible, and South Australia did. South Australians responded amazingly well. Australians really as a whole. So for both of those areas, they actually, were turning things around, and obviously they've been kicked in the guts again. So I think the interesting thing for us is we won't be able to travel overseas. We probably won't be able to travel interstate for a little while yet either. So those intrastate trips are going to be super important. But I feel like South Australians, if the bushfire response is anything to go on, I think they're going to respond really well when restrictions are sort of lifted a bit and we can travel. I think people are going to want to get out there and explore their own state.
And there's a couple of very exciting things happening in South Australia in the next couple of years. Obviously, we're seeing today on social media the first look at the new SkyCity there in Adelaide. And you've had a bit of a look at it yourself. Talk us through it.
Mate, look, that's a really exciting thing. Like tourism has been on a ride for the last, 4 years, really booming. What that does is it just creates this, brilliant roll-on effect where you start, success breeds success. So we've seen, game changer things like the Darrenberg Cube, then the Bend Motorsport Park. We saw some of those things, starting to come on stream. So now we're starting to see some of these projects where, we had gaps in our offering that are starting to be filled because people are starting to see that strength of tourism, which of course has been interrupted now. But when you look at the 5-star space in Adelaide, we had, the Intercon and the Hilton, which have been sort of admirably going along for, 20 odd years, but essentially other than the Mayfair, which is an exceptional hotel, we really didn't have anything else in that space. So the really exciting thing from our side is, the industry has sort of recognised this, and then you've seen, firstly now with SkyCity, then with Crown Plaza, then with Sofitel, and a couple of others still to come, that, some of those gaps are going to be filled. And what it does do, I mean, you look at that riverbank area, it's probably one of those areas for people in Adelaide. We've probably always thought it was going to take off, but not really sure. And then you look at this and go, well, yeah, now you can definitely see that it's going to be incredible.
And another thing that's going to be incredible is the Barossa Valley Hotel. Again, you've been through and seen how that's going to look. Talk to us through that and to the people out there that want to know more about it, Brent.
Yeah, look, absolutely. I mean, when you look at both those projects, EOS by SkyCity and then Oscar at Seppeltsfield, I mean, you're talking about like really literally world-class properties. So, EOS with SkyCity, have got this, huge sky bar overlooking the Oval and the River Torrens, and most of the rooms are all suites. When you look at Oscar Seppeltsfield, it's very similar. So a lot of suites, a sky bar, incredible world-class, hotel. And the great thing about it is, in terms of, we've seen what's happened with McLaren Vale with the Cube. So when the Cube went into McLaren Vale, it just elevated things to the next level. And from our perspective, we saw McLaren Vale win, 3, 4, or 5 awards last year of, Emerging Destination of the Year globally. So it really put it on the map. So when you look at Barossa, it's got all that wonderful history and already a great brand name. And then you throw in something like this, you're talking about a 12-story building, incredible architectural shape, wellness centre, restaurant, penthouse apartments, etc. I mean, that's the kind of thing that you dream of from a tourism perspective. So to have that in our backyard is going to be pretty exciting.
And something else that's very exciting is SATV, which is a digital campaign that you've got the Sloans involved in, Belinda Sloan and Rory, of course. Talk us through how that's all about.
Yeah, they're great guys. Very lucky to be involved with them. I mean, where that came from was, I guess, when you're promoting tourism, it's like, how do you remain relevant when you can't promote tourism? So rather than just go dark and do nothing for 4 months, we decided to put something out where, as you can imagine, there's these great places like, say, Lot 100. I'll use that as a good example because they've done really well. So normally Lot 100 will get a few thousand people up there on a weekend, a lot of staff, etc. So the only way for them to survive is, doing a whole bunch of e-commerce type stuff. So they spoke to all the farmers in the area, got all their local produce, they got their gin, their beer, packaged it all up, and they started offering, they had, this amazing restaurant up there. So they had all these ingredients and pizza and pasta and everything. So I flipped it around and had all these boxes. So they called it Lot 100 the Grocer. And just, threw it out there. And so SATV, what we can do is, we've got 2.5 million followers on social. We get about 6 million people coming to southaustralia.com every year. So we can use our audience to actually really elevate that and get that out there, and really help these guys along. So when you see pictures of Lot 100, with 150 boxes that they've got to deliver per day, it feels great from our perspective that we've been able to help, some of that, get out there. And what that does is it just keeps some of their people employed. It just keeps them keeping on going, so that, when we get to the other side of this pandemic, those guys are still there, they're still operating, and then they can get back to doing what they do best.
And obviously it's going to be a huge task, the recovery from here. What sort of plans do you have in place with the Tourism Commission once, this horrible virus is over, hopefully sooner rather than later?
No, geez, it's brutal, isn't it? But yeah, look, I think interstate's where it's going to kick off. There's no doubt about that. And, travelling around South Australia by South Australians. And I think the same way that we went into the restrictions are probably going to be how it comes out. So, you won't go straight away to restaurants being open. It'll be that you'll be able to go to a restaurant, but limited to, say, 10 people. You'll be able to go to a bar but limited to 10 people, that type of thing. So it'll be a while, it'll be stages before you get to like everything being fully open. And everything always has to come back through that sort of health lens. But the exciting thing is when you look at it, you know, you could still do something pretty amazing. Like if you think about, you could go and have a weekend, you could travel down to the Yorke Peninsula, you know, in the not too distant future. You could stay in some accommodation down there. You could walk around Innes National Park, maybe go for a surf, you know, go to the brewery, pick up a few beers down there, and, you know, you could kick back and have a pretty good weekend. You know, that's exciting to think that that's not that far away. So that's probably where it's going to kick off, and then you'll probably see some of that interstate and international stuff coming through a little bit longer.
And another place that's certainly taken a big hit, or when I say place, another business I should say, is Virgin Australia. Obviously, they've talked about being a voluntary administration, which is horrible, and no doubt that affects the tourism industry as well. Where to from here for them, do you think, Brent?
Yeah, I mean, there's two ways of looking at that. I mean, obviously, it's not pleasant, and they probably wouldn't want to go through that. But, you know, administration's a good way of actually restructuring a business. You know, they're publicly listed, so, you know, their shares would have continued to just bomb. So if they go into administration, they cease trading for a while. You know, apparently there's up to something like, you know, 10 parties that are looking at it. So I feel really confident that we'll continue to see a Virgin Australia in the air. Just what that ownership looks like, you know, we'll have to wait and see. But it's super important that you have that there. I mean, they're a great partner of ours. You know, when those planes are sort of, you know, 80-85% full coming in from, you know, Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane, Perth, etc., that's really vital to our industry. So I feel really confident that we're going to continue to see a Virgin in the skies. It just depends on, you know, who the owners are going to be. I think some of the really innovative stuff, until we get a vaccine, I think you're going to see businesses like Virgin and Qantas and so on are going to be making adjustments. So things like being able to fly but not being able to buy the middle seat, for example, I think you'll see that early days. And I've spoken to coach operators, for example, who normally would have, you know, 52 people in a coach. They're going to do seating in like a herringbone configuration. So you won't ever have somebody sitting directly behind you. Things like that, I think the industry is innovating and understanding that, you know, we have to do things differently while there's still those health issues, because until you get a vaccine, you won't feel completely safe. So you just have to do those kinds of things to make sure that we stay healthy.
Yeah, well, we're certainly heading in the right direction, and you know, well done for everything you're doing so far in terms of from the Tourism Commission and your role as the Executive Director of Marketing, mate. Keep up the great work. It's really great to chat to you, and look forward to speaking again soon. Yeah, look, thanks, Bevo, anytime, mate, and yeah, appreciate the support and look forward to South Australians, you know, getting back out there and supporting our great tourism industry. Yeah, well said. All the best, mate. Talk soon. Cheers. Cheers, mate. Ciao. Bye.